episode of Healthy Mind, Healthy Life. I'm your host Avik, and today we are having someone whose story is not just powerful, but I would say it's transformative. Please welcome my guest, Andrew Drasen. So, welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks, Avi. Glad to be here.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, I'll quickly love to introduce you with Andrew. So, Andrew is the author of A Vision of Hope and creator of a 90-day framework that helps people rebuild their lives with identity, clarity, and purpose. So, his journey is raw, like marked by addiction, incarceration, and devastating personal loss. But out of that pain, he built not just a memoir, but a trilogy that bridges story into practice. And also, he's now shaping the communities, treatment programs, and recovery plans on the systems that offer long term hope. Yeah. So, this is not just a conversation about surviving, dear listeners. It's all about how we rise, rebuild, and reclaim the purpose. So, I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get started. And, Andrew, welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thanks for the introduction. That was a great summary. So, what started as a memoir that I wrote my last time behind bars and in treatment, kind of spun into much more than that. As you said, it's part of a trilogy. There's the Reflections companion book, so where the memoir tells what happened, what I felt, what I thought when it happened. The Reflections companion book distills the wisdoms and lessons learned from those events. Then there's a workbook that helps people to internalize it and make practical application for their own lives and to kind of learn from my mistakes. I mean, really, the curriculum. It's a 90-day curriculum as of now. I'm currently basically modifying that to film it and offer it as a school community. I'm not sure if you've heard of School, SKOOL, but it's an app
Yeah.
where you can post a bunch of different courses and things of that nature. I just got all of the equipment in. I'm beginning the filming process, and my goal is to have that ready for launch at the time of the release of my books, which is December 2nd.
Amazing. That's really amazing. And yes, I have been into school and I mean SKWL, and yeah, it's a great community. So definitely. And so from there, like I'd love to ask you, like about the seed of a change. Like your book, which is a vision of hope, began in the unluckiest of the places, a jail day room. I mean, from there, like looking back now, do you feel that writing was more about the survival, or it was just already the beginning of your transformation? What do you say?
It was the beginning of really, that wasn't even the actual beginning of my transformation. I guess the real beginning of my transformation occurred during a previous relationship, which just helped me to see that a different version of my life was possible. Then
Hmm.
I achieved recovery for a little bit, some decent clean time. I had like a year clean, but I lost my gratitude. Whereas I used to be grateful for my job and, having a lot going on and not having a bunch of downtime, I became, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of, negative about it. So that led to a relapse, which led to an overdose, which led to the last incarceration. And I thought about writing a book for a while, and I found myself doing 6 to 8 months. And so I had the time and the will. So I decided to start writing. I mean, that was a process. Yeah, I mean, I'd write for like 4 to 6 hours every single day for 6 months, and I ended up finishing it 5 minutes before release. So it was definitely a healing process. I relived everything. It was the first tears that I shed for my grandma Drasen. It was the first tears that I shed for my maternal grandfather who passed away while I was in prison, and that that was almost like numbing. It wasn't real to me, like it didn't. All I could focus on was what was going on around me, and I couldn't grieve properly, and I think that helped me actually grieve his loss. So it was definitely a healing process.
Understood. No, correct, definitely. So like I mean, this is really powerful because it shows us that even in the darkest environments, the human spirit looks for light. And it makes me wonder, like, how many of us overlook the fact that transformation often starts in the smallest and the quietest acts. So, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely believe that pain promotes growth. Sometimes it requires friction in order to build something better and to be able to kind of internalize it and come to meaning out of it. And maybe we find meaning out of the most devastating circumstances of our lives. It could put us on an entirely different trajectory. Um, and I feel like living intentionally and living with purpose, I mean, I feel like it's so important, but it's something that's easily lost. Either we get distracted by survival. Maybe we just have to pay the bills
Right.
and we're focused on just getting through the day to day, or maybe we attach to comfort, and it's easier to stay with what and not as risky to really chase what your passion is and what drives you and what would make you feel fulfilled. There's a risk to any kind of change. It's why so many of us resist change, because it's more comfortable. I mean, those are just a couple of the reasons, but yeah, I mean, a purpose-driven life, that's what the curriculum is really all about. It's about, identity restoration, cognitive restructuring, goal setting, taking action, and then at the end, it kinda zooms out and looks at, what kind of legacy do you wanna have? What kind of impact do you wanna have on your community? How do you wanna be remembered? So, it gets people thinking bigger than themselves and how they can give back to others.
Exactly. I agree. And you often say that healing is the only beginning, and that growth comes when we rediscover identity and clarify the direction. So, why do you think that so many people stop at just healing?
Well, because it's easier. And I don't even know if I feel like a lot of people
Hmm.
don't fully heal from
Okay.
what they need healing from. A lot of times it'll kind of scar over and it will manifest itself in different ways. Maybe our actions, our behaviors, our traits, our interactions with others, the decisions we make. I mean, it's all influenced by our past experiences.
Mm, mm,
So if we don't take the time to really dive deep and look at what happened to us, what our role was, what we did to others, then it's very hard to continue to move forward openly and honestly, and just
mm,
kind of guided by that inner light. I believe that that inner light is within all of us, and when it guides our actions, our interactions, and our words, then purpose, it just becomes a byproduct, as does resilience, consistency, because then it's not work. You're being
right.
driven by a higher good.
Exactly. Exactly. Ooh, and lovely. So, can you share an example of how rediscovering identity changes not just how someone sees themselves, but um, how they live day to day?
Well, I mean, the first step is identification. So, like, you need to identify, what
Mm,
your relationships were like with your family. What was your childhood like growing up? What kind of traumas did you have to, overcome and, heal from that? So it doesn't affect your day to day. Otherwise, like I said, it can kind of manifest itself in other ways. I mean, maybe you grew up in a household, like kind of an abusive household, and you're repeating that behavior. Or, maybe you're not physically abusive, but you're like short and condescending to your loved one. Or, maybe you grew up in a rough neighborhood, and you had to be aggressive for survival. But now it's costing you every job that you get because you're always blowing up at your boss. We need to examine why it is we do what we do and what influences that, and then take an honest look at that in order to change. I mean, that's the first step, is identification.
Hmm. Exactly. I agree. And wow. So like what to say? Like uh that flips the script on the popular, I mean, just heal and move on kind of advice. So what you are saying is like healing is not the finish line, but it's the launch pad. And I think our listeners really need that distinction. So what do you like to say on this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. So, I mean, once we heal, then we're able to kind of see things with a new clarity, and then we're able to. So, like with my curriculum, for example, like it starts with
Hmm.
the identity part of it, identifying what those relationships were like, and childhood, those past traumas. Then it goes to looking more inward, looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, your goals, where you want to what you want your life to look like. Then, it's visualizing, closing your eyes and seeing it. Where do you want to live? What do you want to be doing for work? What do you want to be doing for your free time? What do you want your relationships to look like? Like, see it and smell it and taste it, like, and that takes some practice.
Hmm.
That requires meditation, which is another very strong, grounding technique. Um, then from there, it's creating an action plan and writing it down, and then breaking those bigger goals down into smaller chunks, so it's something that's achievable. And then putting a date on it. Harvard did a study that found that people who wrote their goals down and put a date on it were substantially more likely to accomplish their goals. I mean, it
Hmm.
makes it real and concrete and just gets it from out of your head and into the world. I mean, that's part of, kind of manifestation. So, um, then from there, like I said, it kind of zooms out and what kind of impact you want to have. So healing is only the beginning of the journey. Then it comes down to purpose and giving back.
Hmm. True. And like what to say, like as you have said that everyone has something to recover from, and not just people facing the addiction or the trauma, but from here, like what does recovery look like for someone who might say that, like, but I have never had those struggles? What do you say on this?
Well, I mean, it doesn't even have to be something as overt as like addiction or incarceration. I mean, it can be, maybe a childhood trauma, or maybe, you were in an abusive relationship, or,
Hmm.
maybe, you got jumped, or maybe, were a victim of assault or a victim of burglary, or, maybe it's just the death of a dream. Maybe you had one vision of your life, and it's your life now looks nothing like what that vision of. I mean, that's all requires, taking a look at and healing from. So it doesn't have to be something that's, big and in your face. I mean, how many of us didn't deal with bullying, and did that affect our psyche? I mean, um, self-image issues, shopping addiction, gambling addiction. I mean, there's numerous different ways that, our previous traumas can show their heads.
Hmm. Got it. Got it. So, do you think that labeling recovery as universal helps reduce the stigma? Or, I mean, find some people resist that idea.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, mental health is part of our overall health. You have your
Mm.
physical health, your mental health, and your spiritual health. And then also kind of your interrelational health. What do your relationships look like? So,
Yes.
um by, bringing it to the forefront of the conversation, it brings it out of the shadows. There's nothing to be ashamed about in asking for help. We all need help at some point in our lives. We are an interdependent society. None of us are completely independent unless you're some hermit living in the woods. That's about the only way you're going to be completely independent. And I'm all right on that life. I think most of us are. So, um, yeah, I mean, there were actually studies that were done that showed that people who spent prolonged period in the hole in isolation while incarcerated showed the same brain damage as people with multiple concussions. So, and that's because it's ingrained in us. I mean, you can think back to like pre-society days where like cavemen. If you were alone, you're much more likely to get picked off by a predator. So that group and herd mentality is ingrained in our DNA. So. We're all reliant on someone, and it is nothing to be ashamed of to ask for help if you need any kind of support. There are numerous resources out there.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly true. So, um, definitely and why I love this because the recovery as a human condition, um, not a sentence, definitely. Because whether it's the burnout, grief, or even the identity crisis, uh, all of us are carrying things that requires us to recover in some way, right? So, uh, yeah, definitely. I love this definitely. And like you have lived through the addiction, incarceration, and also the heartbreaking loss. So, but yet your mission now is about your purpose. So, how do you transform something so painful into something that uh, drives you forward? I mean, if you just share or clarify.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak directly on this. My after I was released from right after I finished the book and I was released from that time being locked up, I had met who was my fiance and we'd been together for 5.5 years and she committed suicide in July. So obviously that hit me pretty hard. But the more that I looked at it and analyzed it, there's no better way to honor her than by helping people who dealt with similar issues, be it addiction, mental health, or in my case, criminality, incarceration, things of that nature. So um, it really just kind of drove me to see this through because I believe that my message can help a lot of people. And I feel like a lot of us are kind of searching and trying to make meaning out of our lives and to take control of our lives. There we have so little control over so much of what happens to us. The only thing that we can control is how we respond to it. So we can either let it break us or we can let it build us back stronger.
Exactly. Yeah. So, do you ever worry that purpose built on pain might keep people tied to their wounds, or uh, does it actually free them?
No, I mean, I feel like your wounds can kind of become your armor.
Mhm.
If you wear them on your sleeve and you don't hide from them and you talk about them, that's how you heal. Um, we're only as sick as our secrets, and as soon as they come to light, then they don't hold the same power anymore. So,
Mm.
I actually got a tattoo on my arm memorializing her. So anytime I see it, I think of her and um it's part of my story, and we are not defined by what happens to us, but we are defined by, the impact we have on others and how we're remembered.
Mm. True, true, exactly. And one of the goals to change how society views addiction, recovery, and re-entry. So, if you could rewrite the public narrative in one sentence, like what would it sound like?
The current public narrative or what I think it should be.
Mm. Sorry, I mean, in both the ways you can say, yeah.
Okay, I mean, the current public narrative is it's a criminality issue, and people who commit crimes while on drugs are immoral and need to be punished. How I think it should be framed is it's a mental health issue on the same
Mm,
level of diabetes or Alzheimer's, things of that nature. I mean, the diabetic didn't choose to become a diabetic when they ate their first piece of candy. The lung cancer patient didn't choose to get lung cancer the first time they picked up a cigarette. Well, an addict didn't choose to become an addict the first time they used the drug. That's a lot of times that's I mean, there are obviously a lot of factors that involve whether someone will become addicted or not, but it wasn't at least for me, it wasn't a choice.
mm,
The first time that I snorted an oxycontin, it was like it was like I was holding my breath my entire life and I was finally able to breathe again. So I was hooked immediately. And yes, I made the choice to use that drug that time, but after that it kind of takes over. It becomes just as important as breathing and eating and using the bathroom and sleeping, and they're like an essential bodily function. It hijacks the brain. So until we start looking at it in a mental health aspect and through that lens, we're going to keep spinning our wheels and spending way too much on incarcerating addicts, which does not help things any. It only sets the addict further back. It introduces negative environments, where they make negative associations, and it removes the fear of being incarcerated. So usually when someone gets out, they get out in a much worse position than what they went in at. A lot of times you'll lose everything while you're in. So, you're released, no resources, no coping skills, a lot of new negative associations, and it's very easy to fall back into that trap. So, um, I think that's the biggest thing is reframing it and looking at it through a mental health lens as opposed to a criminality lens.
yep, yep, exactly. And wow, so like definitely like so you remember like in the beginning I was mentioning about the trilogy. So how do you see your trilogy and community projects contributing to that change in a uh, tangible way?
Well, in the book and in the Reflections companion book, like
Mm,
I speak on policy, and I speak on things that I feel could be changed, and I give potential solutions. And the goal isn't necessarily for politicians to adopt my specific viewpoints, but it's to open up that discussion towards real solutions instead of continuously spinning our wheels and going on the same merry-go-round. Um, and like I also make like monetary points on it also. So that's part of my goal. It's not just to hope or not just to help individuals take control of their lives, but to open up that wider conversation as a society on what's broken and what we can do to fix it.
mm-hmm. Got it, got it. Lovely, lovely. So, I mean, that's a call to, call to action, not just for the policymakers, but for each of us. I mean, to see people not as their mistakes, but as their the possibilities also. So, uh, and that shift honestly can change the entire communities. So, what's your take on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I believe that public policy is shaped by public perception. So, if enough of us care and, make our voices heard, either they'll enact what we tell them to enact or we vote them out. I mean, it's as simple as that. So,
Hmm,
um, I mean, there's a lot of problems with our political system just to achieve change with our two. I'm in the United States. And like with our two-party system, and how gerrymandered the election maps are, it doesn't pay except to be very left or very right. There's no middle ground anymore. People just kind of go with their party lines or risk being ostracized. So that's a big thing that needs to change. And like I said, I do give some steps that I think could help improve things in the books, but um, it's going to take society as a whole kind of demanding change in order to see anything meaningful.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, any suggestion today you want to share with the listeners?
Any what that I want to share?
Any suggestions?
Um, yeah, I mean, just realize that no problem is insurmountable. Everything has a solution. Change is the only constant. So, just be adaptable and kind of go with the flow of life. But, do that work and find out what your purpose is. Because um, Thoreau said the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. And, one thing that I know I don't want for my life is to look back at the end of it and say, man, I wish I would have done this, or I wish I would have tried that. I wish I would have given that my all. I don't want to live a life of regrets. So, and, the thing with that is we don't know until we get there. But, just when you find an opportunity that ignites your passion, don't be afraid to jump.
Correct. Amazing. Yep. Lovely. So, Andrew, this conversation, I would say, has been a kind of gift, like from your own story of resilience to the frameworks that you have built for others. And you have reminded us that purpose is not accidental, it's intentional and step by step. So, for the listeners, here's a challenge, like, ask yourself not just who am I today, but who can I become? And then take one small, measurable step towards that vision. So, Andrea's book, A Vision of Hope, and his 90-day program are powerful tools to guide that journey. And we will link everything into the show notes. But still, Andrea, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
You can find all the information at avisionofhopebook.com. You can subscribe to the newsletter, find socials, pre-order the book. You can find all of the updates at visionofhopebook.com.
Hmm. Got it. Lovely. So, dear listeners, as I mentioned, I'll put all the details into the show notes for your easy reference. And until next time, remember that a healthy mind and a healthy life start with choosing the hope, even in the hardest moments. So, stay inspired, stay resilient, and keep building the life that you are meant to live. So, thank you so much.